So I was teaching my sister at the midnight. I was teaching her what to do with the morphine and the paracetamol and all of that, and then taught her what to do. This was midnight. Went to bed, and after about half an hour, I heard a noise, and I went into Thea's room, and she was really struggling to breathe. And then that just got worse and worse. So I phoned the hospice. I knew there was no point in phoning 111 or 999 because I didn't really know what was going on. So I phoned the hospice, and the nurse spoke me through what to do. The nurse was going to come to our house, but then Thea's breathing got to the point where I was really worried, so I called 999 for an ambulance to take her straight to the hospice, not to the hospital. And then the nurse from the hospice said she would meet us at the hospice. But the paramedics were really sweet. They were only about 12, and they'd never seen anything like it in their life. They'd never come across a child that had a do not resuscitate order against them. They'd never been told not to try chest compressions. It's just because her organs were all out of place, so she wasn't allowed chest compressions. They didn't really know what to do. They were slightly flummoxed, but they were absolutely lovely. And we had the nurse on the phone from the hospice telling them everything what to do. But I mean, for a long time, we were just at home with the ambulance outside, and these paramedics we really think she should go to hospital, and you're telling us not to take her to hospital. We'll never know if that was the right decision or not, but we went to the hospice, and within a few hours, so she had some clonazepam stuff, really hardcore medicine that we had at home for really bad seizures, and and then so we brought that with us, and she had some of that, and she was all right then for a few hours, and we thought she was going to pull through, and then it just started again, and she just couldn't breathe. There was just too much pressure, I think. It was, and then she passed away at about 4 a.m.
How I came to know about St Andrew's Hospice and the facilities it provides was when my grandson died. He was a much loved and wanted baby. My daughter had him via IVF, so he was like a miracle baby. When he was 6 weeks old, he got meningitis. My daughter took him to hospital. He started having a fit, and his heart actually stopped when he was in Grimsby Hospital. They didn't know what was the matter with him at that point. What we didn't know at that time was that he was already brain dead. But they did scans and everything, and informed us a couple of days later. I think it was the following day actually. But my daughter didn't accept it, that he'd actually gone. So it was a couple of days later before they actually turned off the life support machine. It was the most horrendous time as a family that anyone could go through. It all happened so quickly. I didn't really have time to think about what was going on, but when he actually died, one of the staff members at Sheffield Children's Hospital told us about St Andrew's Hospice and the facilities that were provided here. And they were really good. They arranged to come and get him from Sheffield. We went with the lady in the car from St Andrew's Hospice. She arranged paperwork and everything to be able to transfer Jacob to St Andrew's Hospice. They'd prepared a room for him that was already cold. There was a crib in there, a swinging crib, so he could be put in the crib instead of going to a funeral home. And they played lullabies to him, and it gave my daughter time to accept his death. And also
I was working alongside one of the nurses, and I observed her carrying out end of life with a young chap that used our service for a number of years. And from my experience, like flipping from her to the everyday practice with the children, my observations of her good care was out of this world. And the way she spoke to the individual, okay, he was end of life, so quite asleep a lot of the time, but communication was throughout. It was something that I looked at in the fact that that is how I would want to be cared for. So her nursing skills was, like I say, was phenomenal. And the time she spent with the family and the individual, it was special. Memories for the family at the time to hold on to, and the communication conversations that took place between the nurse and them as a family with the individual, in my opinion, was something that you just don't forget those experiences, and how she managed all the things that she did on that shift. And then unfortunately the young chap did kind of die that day, and that's why I know she stayed over her time. But how she achieved all those things on that shift in the hours that she did, I'll never know.
Within Hull and East Riding, we support the families that have got palliative and end-of-life needs. If a child is recognised as being end-of-life, then we will offer a 24/7 service as much as possible, and that involves being available for the family for support. Quite often they'll go on a syringe driver for the medications, so we'll attend daily to do the syringe driver and to offer any other support that might be needed around that time. We had a young man recently, and the nursing team that were involved already knew the young man because they'd been involved because he was an oncology patient, and we do the oncology blood, so we build up that rapport already. And the parent absolutely relied on the community nursing team for that support at the end of life, and called upon them when they needed to. And it was more than just doing the syringe driver. They did a lot of kind of end of life stuff and memory making and some really nice things. Some of it done quite late into the evening, but just some really nice supportive visits and doing paintings and footprints and things like that.
We do have a forget-me-not room for a child for end of life, which is down that corridor, and it has a parents' room attached to it, where we're able to support the whole family.
So I've worked in this team for about a year now. Prior to that, I worked at the hospital. At the hospital, I never witnessed any end-of-life care, but here, sadly, we lost 2 children in the summer in a really close succession of each other. The child I care for was only diagnosed with the condition in February of this year, and then became quite unwell in a short space of time. It was only about 3 weeks until he passed away. So my experience of end-of-life and palliative care was kind of rolled into one. It's important that we know and understand the medications that we give at that stage, why we give them, what they do, and why it's helpful for the child. We work closely with Leeds Hospital, the outreach nurses, an oncology nurse specialist in Hull as well. So during the end-of-life visits, we might need to tweak the medication to see if that has a positive effect. And there are always phone calls between us and Leeds to assess that. Providing support for the family is really important, and the Band 6 nurse who led the team did an amazing job. I felt really lucky to learn from her giving that care. She was really good and caring and just perfect, a really good example. I just felt like she knew the child and the mum and what they wanted. She just knew what to do at the right moment on every time and every visit.
I think there's a perception that actually hospice care is ultimately for end-of-life care. And I think that may be more with families that don't access a hospice. And I think with clinicians and other professionals, I do feel that they're aware of those services, but I think society, the public, do lack that awareness of what we are here for. And there is so much that can be provided by a hospice. It's that emotional support, it's that respite care, it's those memory making, it's those fun times, it's getting those children, young people and their families through very tough times and trying to give them a better quality of life at the time. And yes, we would be here at end of life, but it's about that whole journey with the family and the child.
The paramedics were really sweet.
How she achieved all those things on that shift in the hours that she did, I'll never know.
And it gave my daughter time to accept his death.
She just knew what to do at the right moment on every time and every visit.